If you're new here, I'm Kathy from the Delphio Quilt Company. I love quilting and I share the projects I'm working on this channel. For this video, it is actually part of a series that's going to be summer long called the Slow Summer Star series. We are on block 3 of the series. If you are sewing along with this, that is wonderful. I have a link on our website at delphioquiltcompany.com where I'm putting all of the cut instructions on the site. And the link is available at the top of the page, and then once you get there, you'll see the cut instructions and a link to the video for that week's block. And I would absolutely love to see your progress. If you want to tag me on Instagram, that would be great. It's at Delphio Quilt Co. All right, let's get started with block number 3. For block number 3, I picked out these 2 squares from my layer cake pack, and I think they will look nicely in this block. I'm also bringing back the background fabric, which is Feather from Moda. And the pieces that we need to cut for this, first from fabric A, which is going to be this blue teal color here. I need to cut 1 4 3/4 inch square and 2 4 1/4 inch squares. I'm going to start with my biggest square first, and I'll cut the smaller ones. And I'm going to start just by taking a little bit of this edge off. I don't want that ziggity edge on my pieces. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off. Sometimes when I'm working with layer cake squares, I need every little bit of it, but for this particular one, I do not. And I am just going to cut straight down into 4 3/4, because then I'm going to get at least one of my 4 1/4 inch squares from this. Okay, there's my 4 3/4. I'm just going to cut this one down to 4 1/4. I need one more 4 1/4. And I'm going to subcut these right away. We're going to subcut these 2 squares into, each square is going to be into 4 triangles. So I'm just going to lay them on top of each other. And I'm going to cut them on the diagonal 2 times. And I am using the 45-degree mark on my ruler just to make sure I've got this lined up really well. I'm going to carefully lift up my ruler and turn this guy around and do the same thing. Okay, now I have 8 of the triangles. And now fabric B. From this one, I just need 4 3 1/4 inch by 2 5/8 inch rectangles. Like I did before, I'm just going to clean off the edge here. I'm just going to cut a strip of 4 3/4. I'll get 3 of the pieces out of this section, and then I'll just have to cut 1 more. And then from the background fabric, I need 1 7 1/4 inch square and then 4 3 1/2 inch squares. And for the 3 1/2 inch squares, I'm just going to cut a 7 inch square and then divide it in 4. I'm also going to go ahead and subcut the 7 1/4 inch square right away, just like I did on fabric A. I'm going to make 4 triangles from this square. Okay, and now that I've got all of my pieces cut, I'm going to show you my test block, just so I can give you a better sense of how I'm going to put this together. The first thing I'm going to do is put together these points here on the star. And that, if you've ever sewn a square in a square block, this is the same thing. It's just we're only sewing 2 sides of it. And then I'm going to attach the rectangles, this middle square, and I'm probably going to sew this middle band next, and then the triangles last. Okay, first, to do the points, I'm going to get my triangles that I cut earlier, and my 4 3 1/2 inch squares from the background fabric. And to do this, I want to make sure I've got these centered on one of the edges. So I'm going to fold this with the long side here in half and just give it a little finger press just so I know that middle point. And I'm going to do the same on the square. And that way when I go to line this up, I know to line up those 2 points. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch along the side here. You may notice that this is longer. That's because that allows for the 1/4 inch seam. And it'll make sense once we sew it on and press it open. And I'm going to repeat that for each of these other 3 squares here. All right, now I'm just going to line these up and sew these, and I'll come back and show you what we do next. Okay, so now that I've got these sewn on, I'm just going to press these really quick. And I'm going to press it towards the dark fabric. And then we'll get those other triangles sewn on. Okay, now I've got these all pressed. I'm just going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to find the middle point of the long side of the triangle. And I'm going to find the middle point of the square. And this time, you need to make sure that when you're folding it in half, that you're going all the way to the original edge of the square and not to the seam allowance. And then just like before, I'm going to line these up and then sew these with a 1/4 inch seam. And just like before, I'm just pressing these to the dark side. So I'm just going to clip off all these dog ears, and then I'm going to just square these up a little bit just to make sure they're the right size. So when these are all pressed and trimmed, they should line up with the rectangles pretty well. They should be 4 3/4 inch in length here. So mine look pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and then sew the rectangles to each of these. All right, so I've got my rectangles sewn on, and just like before, I'm going to press the seams. I'm going to press the seams towards the rectangle. All right, now we're ready to lay this block out. So I'm going to sew the triangles first to these corner pieces that are diagonal here, and then I'm going to sew the center piece together as well. So the triangle piece, it looks like it's going to be way too big, but it's actually going to be okay once it's sewn together and the seam allowance is on there. To line these up, we're going to line the bottom straight edge of this part of the triangle with the rectangle, and then sew a 1/4 inch along the seam. So I've got this one sewn, and you can see when I start to unfold it, it lines up pretty nicely. So it looks big, but it ends up just fine in the end. And I'm just going to repeat doing that, sewing these pieces together, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what this block looks like when I'm all done. And here is our finished block. I'm also going to bring back block 1, just so you can see how that's going to look together. And here's block 2 from last week. So I hope that you liked this tutorial. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and visit us at DelfieldQuiltCo.com. Have a great day.